Hi, it's Nikki, and welcome back to Live a Little, your cozy corner of the internet where we explore all of the in-between parts of life, the messy, unfiltered, and honest parts where you may not feel like you have someone to discuss them with, but we do it all judgment-free around here. Welcome back. I must say, a little preface for this video. I'm not feeling too hot. I didn't have a very good night yesterday. I went to a party for the BAFTAs, which are coming up, and I was walking around, got a drink in my hand with one of my friends, just chilling, and I was already feeling a bit anxious because I feel like I'm more anxious than ever at the moment to go to events, which is really weird because it's not my first rodeo, but it never gets easier for me when I go to these types of events. I dread them more, even if I've got someone coming with me. I mean, it's a bit of like a barrier and a relief, but was very anxious already. And then a couple of hours into the event, I was sat speaking to my friend, and she's actually my stylist, Eloise. And then all of a sudden, I said to her, I'm having a nosebleed. And then she was like, wait, what? Say that again. And I was like, I'm having a nosebleed. And then I could just taste blood in my mouth. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now. I'm at this party and I'm having a nosebleed. And it's like one of those experiences that's like instantly sobering. Like I'd had a drink. I was like a tiny bit kind of tipsy, like, because I was like, I need to drink something just so I feel a bit less anxious and in my head. And I was instantly sobered up. And then we just went to the toilet and stood in like a cubicle for like 30 minutes while I pinched my nose and waited for it to stop. So I'm feeling a bit anxious today and not quite with it and not quite, all there, and a bit sad. Yesterday, I called my mum from the cab on the way back home because she was messaging me like loads of different spam texts because I was like, I've had a nosebleed, just so you know, I'm waiting for it to stop and then I'm going to come home. And then I didn't have good service in the toilet, so her messages weren't coming through. But she was like, like mums do when they see something happening where they just want to protect you and try and help you. She was like spam rage, like rampant texting me. And I was like, don't worry, I will just get in a cab because you then need to get into London. And that's going to take you basically the same amount of time as me then just going home in a cab if my bleed seems to have settled. But I was just, I was very sad. And then I called my mum from the cab and just had a little cry because yes, the bleed wasn't big, but it's not the point. The point is that chronic illnesses it's a very real and sobering moment where it just completely takes you out of feeling carefree, even for the moment, and it takes you out of the moment. You don't feel like you're in it anymore, and suddenly you can feel every cell in your body because you're so worried about things getting worse. And I think I just felt quite caught off guard. My bleeds always start so out of nowhere that you can never be caught on guard, but I felt so caught off guard, like I could never have predicted that happening, that it just really tainted the night for me, I have to say. And I've not had a bleed, especially like one at an event, I think, in a few years. Did not feel great. I'm not feeling great. Bear with me for this one. Might not be my usual self, but this is my reality. And so I thought I could try my best to just soldier through and just act as if nothing had happened and not even address this. But I just thought, what good is that? And so I'm telling you, I'm not feeling myself, had a shitty evening, but we're here and I'm glad to be able to speak to you about it. Anyway, for today's episode, I wanted to talk about what it is like to go quiet for a while and how romanticising and getting comfortable with being alone and sitting with yourself and actually just living the mundaneness of life can actually be comforting and not shameful. I really, really believe that in life, one of the biggest ways you will become more comfortable with yourself and really get to know yourself is literally just sitting with yourself. It's kind of like putting a mirror to yourself. And I, from a very early age, from as soon as I can remember, have had to spend a lot of time alone out of choice, and often not out of my own choice, alone in having to sit in my hospital bed. And I'd always be with my mum, but it was still me being alone and be sat in silence or confined to a room, or I'd be at school and not have any friends and no one to sit with at lunch. So that was, again, not my choice. I was alone because I didn't have any friends. From a very early age, I've had to, outside of my choice, spend a lot of time with my own company and becoming a friend to myself, I guess you could say. And I think I've never really struggled with being sat in my own company. If anything, actually, I enjoy spending time alone. I find it quite preserving, especially when things like what happened yesterday happened. I then, after that, feel the need to instantly retreat and just spend time in my Nikki bubble in my room. Maybe not the healthiest thing to do, but it's the way that I've learned to cope in order to like self-soothe, and I think just to survive it, really, to kind of get through it, and to self-medicate is by just not having to expose myself to anything or have anyone relying on me. And so being alone has felt like a lot of safety, but then of course unsafety in that sometimes been in my control. But when things have happened to me that haven't felt in my control, then retreating to being alone has felt like my only part where I can be safe and I can just exist. Because I think a lot of times for me, when I've had to spend time with people, it's been a lot of masking, it's been a lot of seeming okay when I'm not. I mean, we all do it. It's been a lot of feeling like I have to just not be myself in order to be liked. And that is so incredibly draining. We've all been there. When you are alone, you're the most true to yourself and true form that you ever will be, more than you will probably be with anyone in your life, because you are just you to the core. You have no one to perform for, no one to serve, no one to make sure is okay. You're just sat with you. And so, yeah, that's never been an issue for me, enjoying my own company. For a while, I didn't think that my own company was enough. I felt like it wasn't enough and it wasn't good enough and it wasn't worthy. I felt like I had to have someone with me to make myself feel worthy, because it was like, oh, if someone is spending time with you, that means they deem you as worthy. So if someone has plans at the weekend or are constantly seeing people, it means that people prioritize spending time with them because they maybe have something that you're lacking. And so I think, yeah, it's never been an issue where I've struggled to just sit with myself, because if anything, I really deeply need that. I am an introvert. And so I really deeply need to have alone time in order to then crawl back out of my cave and do my work and see people and try and do it in a slightly more regulated way. I have to have my time alone in order to regulate myself and my emotions and do the best that I can. It's the way that I've sustained myself for so long. My issue has always been being seen alone, being seen to look lonely or like I have no friends or no one to talk to. It's really been just the worry of like how it looks from the outside. It goes back to as far as I remember being at school, and I wrote like a piece about this recently actually, on my Substack, but saying how never being considered and never having someone that saves you a seat when you're going to meet them, or never having someone that just considers you. I just would worry so much about, I remember I'd go into the lunch hall to try and look for somewhere to sit, or someone that I knew, because I didn't really have any friends. I really didn't. And I'd say from, especially in secondary school, year 7 to 11, I really deeply struggled. I did not have a person or a group of healthy, genuine friendships. Everything was very fickle. And I was in and out of school a lot for like extended periods of time sometimes, because of me not being well or having treatments or the uncertainty that plays in my life. There was no consistency for me, and therefore no consistency in relationships, if any relationships. So honestly, my best friends till I was 16 were my parents. And I'm not ashamed to say that, but they were, by default, really, that I'd spent so much time with them and was lucky to be so close to them, but also had no other option. They were the only people that had kind of given me the time of day in that way, except for like my siblings and my actual family. And so I just remember feeling so anxious to go into the lunch hall. And I remember it'd be like the lesson before lunch, and I would dread lunch times, because where other people are going to their group, talking or hanging out or going outside and playing football, like wherever it is, they have their person. They didn't all, but in my mind, you can only see what you don't have. So to me, everyone had friends except me. And so therefore there was something wrong with me. I lacked something. No one cared to get to know me. I was a loner. I had no one to talk to. No one understood me. And I was so scared about the way that I looked. There was no chance I was going to speak to anyone at school unless I was spoken to first. And so I remember I'd go into the lunch hall, look around, like scan the room. I was so aware that I didn't want to look like I was looking for someone, because I think I've never really moved through the world like I have a sense of assurance in myself and security. I was just saying this to Poppy, my producer that's behind there, that I could be going into a cafe just to get a coffee and I won't go in like I know why I'm there. I always look like I'm a bit lost and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't move through the world with certainty. And I think it's probably because I've had a very sheltered life that nothing's ever kind of just happened from exposure effect. And I'm also just not very certain in myself. Don't feel safe a lot of the time. And so I don't really move with assurance. When someone's walking on the street and you can just tell that they probably know where they're going, I never look like I know where I'm going. I always look like I need directions somewhere. Even if I'm not somewhere where I need directions, I constantly am that person where you want to be like, are you okay? Do you need help? Because I always look puzzled, basically. I could be walking to a coffee shop and I'm so worried about walking in by myself just to get a coffee because I'm worried that people will see me and think I have no friends or I'm alone or make assumptions about me when they don't even know me. I was so insecure about the fact that I didn't have friends, and I felt so shameful in that I felt like it was written on my forehead, you have no friends. No one really cares if you're in a room or you're here or you're there. You know, your presence isn't really cared about, wouldn't notice if you were in the room or not. I felt like it was like slapped on my forehead that you spend your time alone, which I did. I felt so like it was just really obvious that I had no one to sit with at school, and I felt very vulnerable. I would walk into the lunch hall and I would scan the room, but be so anxious to not scan it too quickly because then it looks like worrying and like anxiously trying to look for someone in a room. I was so aware I didn't want to do that. So then people clocked onto it. But I also didn't want to just stand there like a lemon, like I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing. So I would queue up, buy a drink or buy a snack just so I had something to do. I often wouldn't even eat the snack because I bloody hated school dinners. My school had not nice school dinners. I mean, I think that's just a UK experience at public schools. I would buy a drink or buy a snack just so it looked like I was in there for a reason and I had a purpose to be in that room. Because I didn't have, my purpose wasn't, oh, I was going to meet someone, because I had no one to meet. And so at lunchtimes, I would often spend most of them in the toilet alone for the hour. And I'd be so worried about someone walking in and noticing my feet sat in the cubicle and being like, oh, I think those are Nikki's shoes. Because I was so scared. I basically didn't want anyone to know that I was alone and I was spending most of my time alone. And so I think it was just like I was trying to do everything I could to preserve this idea and maybe also preserve it to myself that like, oh no, you do have friends. They just haven't found you yet. Or like, what about this person or that person? But it was a lot of empty friendships. I just became very comfortable with spending time alone. But my biggest issue's not been sitting with my own company. If anything, I welcome it and I prefer it than being in company of others. Being an introvert, you know, that's how I preserve my energy. It's been being deemed as having no friends, which is also completely okay. If you have one friend, if you have no friends, if you're your only friend or your mum is your best friend, all are okay. But I think when you're younger, it feels like quantity over quality when it comes to friendships. You are seen as worthy if you're popular and if you're pretty. And I was neither. I didn't have a friendship group. I was never doing stuff with people on the weekends because no one ever wanted to hang out with me. That was where my problem was. And even now, I go to events. I will sometimes walk in and not know a single person there. And it feels like I'm 10 years old again in the lunch hall, trying to just find somewhere to sit where I can kind of hide myself for an hour and shelter so that it's not laid on display that like, hello, yeah, I have no friends. I'm over here. I would do whatever possible to just look like I have a reason to be there or I know what I'm doing. I went to this event recently and I thought I'd know people there and I didn't. And I just stood there for 2 hours. When I say I literally stood there, it was a jewelry event. I was taking photos of the same jewelry for like an hour just so I looked like I had something to do. And I think we're so scared of just literally being seen sat in our own company, enjoying our own company. And we actually all really struggle to enjoy just being sat with ourselves, that we want to do whatever we can, all means necessary. Me taking pictures of random shit or buying something in the lunch hall just so I look like I'm doing something and that's why I'm there, to look like we have a sense of purpose and fulfillment and like a reason to be there. Because just being, you know, choosing to stand by ourselves isn't something that you feel is okay to do or like you would do. And I ended up getting my own cab home, even though I had like a car booked for me in an hour, because I just did not want to be there any longer. It made me so aware. It's like being sat with all of your friends that are in relationships and you being the only single one. And it's like, yeah, I know that I am single, but it's pushing it in your face because everyone else around you is not that thing. And even though you can be fine with being single, there's something to the fact that everyone else isn't that just makes you feel wrong for it. And I think that's how it feels like when you spend time alone in especially like a crowded room where everyone else seems to be in a conversation or in a group or know why they're there, that you just feel even more just like everyone can see that you're the odd one out, basically, and vulnerable and alone. And it's that whole idea of like, I'd walk anywhere and be like, do I look lonely? Do I look like I have no friends? Do I look like I'm sad? What does it say about me? Even now, something I do is I'll pretend to be on a phone call when I'm walking out of somewhere by myself, like say an event, just so I look like I'm doing something. It's occupying me, because you can't just sit there by yourself and just be. Like, if someone sees you in a cafe just sat there, like looking around, they're going to instantly think in my mind, oh, you're sad. You have no friends. It's the same as when someone sees an old person and instantly assumes they're lonely. No, they could be happy in their own company and living a happy life. And we short circuit to like spending time alone as being a bad thing rather than a choice. When people then see you alone, or at least I'm instantly thinking, they think that you have no friends, basically. My long spiel over, that's my perception of being alone, is I love being alone when I have no one to perform for, but being alone in public is what my barrier is, essentially. So from an early age, my body kind of learned that being alone was a negative thing and a negative feeling. And so I wanted to do everything that I could necessary to never have to feel that feeling again. I think that's why it's really important to romanticize or redefine aloneness and what it means to be alone, and why it has been such a big deal from like as long as time to just be seen sat in your own company, and that equaling being bad. Because when we don't have a choice in something, we often end up resenting the thing itself. So for me, didn't have a choice to like sit with people at school and then chose to spend time alone. I therefore resented the idea of alone time because it was never something that I had a choice in. It's kind of like your friend could be like, oh, we're all going to the pub tonight. Do you want to come? And they've put that branch out and that invitation out. Do you want to come? You've been considered here to spend time with people and to spend time with us. You have a seat at the table. It's up to you whether you choose the seat or you choose a seat at a different table that you're only at, which is an equally as good and as worthy table. But I think having the choice is the whole point. And so being able to know that you're considered, but you choose to spend time alone, is a real difference than not having a choice and your only choice being to spend time alone. Romanticizing being alone is mainly about reclaiming it and reminding myself that if I can choose this, then it can be gentle and it can be mine, and that is control. Having a choice is control, as we've spoken about it a lot. So I want to talk about like FOMO, the born fear of missing out, especially because of social media now, and the fact that you can always see something you're missing out on or you're not at. The fantasy you create in your head that the grass is always greener, and also how you turn that into jomo, which is the joy of missing out. And that's somewhere where I do feel like I've kind of made peace with being at. So we talk about FOMO like it's part of being alive now, and the fear that something better is always happening somewhere else. The fear that everyone is together without you. The fear that you're missing something that will make you feel more included and fulfilled. And I have felt that so strongly because, especially with social media, it makes every version of something that you imagine to look like it's a film. Like it is something that you are missing out on and that you will therefore feel lesser off for not attending. Whether that is a party or drinks with friends, whatever it is constantly showing you a lack that you may feel like you have in your life. It does it in every single way. It like lays bare your insecurities. And so if you're showing people that are hanging out wherever else in the world, you're going to feel like, because I'm not doing that right now, that must make me a lonely, sad person. And it's like, no, you babe, you could just be having a quiet night in. And that is also completely okay. Back in the day, if something was happening and you weren't there, you literally were none the wiser that it was going on. But now, because of social media, it is constantly telling us that there is something happening every second of the day and that we will always wish we were there. And it's this kind of like manufactured longing. So I'm trying to treat my own company as enough and not as a second best option. I felt like if I missed out on hanging out with someone, like say if I was invited to the pub, I would feel like I would have to go to this one interaction Because if I don't go, then my ranking in how good of a friend they see me as or how special I am to this person will drop down by 10 levels because I've not gone to this one thing and I've not been here for this 2 extra hours of socializing. And I think that's because I often felt like in my life that love was conditional, especially when it came to friendship. I also created that in my own mind, but it felt like love was conditional and friendship was conditional. Therefore, if I wasn't at these certain events, that condition would go. Because it was often when I wasn't around at school, my friends would never really make an effort to check in with me and make sure I was okay and maintain those relationships. So when I would come back to school, everyone's friendships around me were stronger than ever and mine were weaker than ever. Any time where I had an opportunity to hang out with people, I was like, I have to do this because if I don't go to this, then they're not going to consider me next time because they're not going to think I want to come. No. Every friend in your life that has been a healthy relationship and that will be a sign of a healthy relationship, unless they absolutely need you to be there and it's like a birthday or a special event where you should be there and show up for them, will understand if you just need a day out. I have an example of this recently where I'd had therapy and it was a really difficult therapy session and I was supposed to see my friend Izzy the same day. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to say no to Izzy and say I can't cancel on her because I know that she'll also want to be able to get out and to see me and I don't want to let her down. But then if I don't have this time to myself, I'm going to let myself down and I'm going to be off worse for it. And I don't know if I can perform today and I don't know if I can mask today and I don't know if this, I don't know if that, but I don't want to let her down. And I'm worried that then she'll think I don't care when actually I care so much that I'm like paralyzed by what to do here that benefits all of us. I sent her a message and I ended up cancelling, but saying like, could we do tomorrow? And then tomorrow came and actually I still felt terrible. And so I again was like profusely apologetic and was like, I'm so sorry, Izzy. I promise you that we will do Wednesday. And she was like, Nikki, you don't need to promise me anything. I just hope that you're okay. And it was that thing that switched in my head of, wow, a genuine friend, so long as they don't need you, wants you to genuinely be okay and won't see that as you not caring by you needing to take time out to just be and to not have to perform or not have to show up. Actually, the person you need to show up for is yourself. That was an act of me putting myself first for once and trying to be selfless, but also not being reprimanded for it, and punished for it. Izzy was literally like, I just want you to be okay. I've been worried about you. That is an example where I realized that I am safe to take time to myself and shit won't hit the fan in all of my relationships. Having that stability in your life, in your relationships that allows you to take time out, but still return just in the same place as you were, allows you to therefore see spending time alone as something that isn't scary. But I also understand that sometimes the issue isn't spending time alone. For me, the issue isn't that I sit with myself. The issue for me is being seen spending time alone. Someone like my brother has never actually wanted to sit in his own company because it's when he sits in his own company, he struggles mentally because his thoughts are the only thing that he has to listen to and his thoughts are a scary place. It's this slippery slope. If you don't want to have hyper socializing or hyper isolation, it's this slippery slope. And also in a time where we feel less disconnected than ever, but more connected than ever in terms of technology, I cannot stress enough how deeply important it is to spend time with people. It's good for your mental health. It's good for your physical health. It is important and it's what makes life worth living. And it gives you stability and security. But my brother's problem, where we're very different, we're very similar people, is like at times he has hyper socialized because that's the way he copes. If he's constantly active, if his brain is constantly doing something, if he's constantly busy having to talk to someone else about their shit, then he never has to sit with his thoughts and worry about his shit and go into a spiral of that. It's like he'll work and then be out in the evening and then he goes to bed. There's no time to actually sit with yourself and have to like be burdened by your own mind. Whereas me, I have probably hyper isolated in the past, which has only actually meant that I've overthought more and I've spiraled more. It's not one size fits all, and what one person needs is not the same as another. Someone could like not see someone for a whole week and be like, I'm going crazy, I need to see someone. And that's my brother. And then I'm like, God, I've seen people 4 days this week. If I don't have one day to myself sometime soon, I'm not going to be okay. I'm literally going to have a mental breakdown. So it's not one size fits all, but it's realizing that it shouldn't be a one or the other. What I've learned is that often where you get into this thought spiral of spending time alone, like my brother has done, is because you're just sat there doing nothing, spending time alone. And though it's really important to listen to yourself and listen to your thoughts and to know yourself and become acquainted with your innermost thoughts as a friend or an enemy at times, as they can be, equally, you can have that time be fulfilling, and you can have that time be things where you're actually doing something while being alone, so it doesn't feel like you're worse off for that. You can do so many different things in your own company to make it feel like a worthy time. You can easily say on the weekend, you spending time by yourself is not doing nothing. That is self-care time. You spending time to yourself, to look after yourself and sit with yourself, doesn't have to be nothing. It can still be time that you feel with fun things. So it doesn't have to feel scary like it can do for some who cope by being with people and are more extroverted in that way. That's what I've realized, is that JOMO is about like the joy of missing out, and how actually you can create these bits of joy and through these mundane things that don't have to be mundane things. It could literally be, I want to watch these 2 films this weekend, and just sit and watch them and then make some notes on them or write a review on Letterboxd for them, and that's what you're going to spend your weekend doing. That is a fun activity that you can do, but also doesn't have to take loads out of you. Because when you feel like you need to spend time alone and you feel like you're constantly having more and more energy taken out of you, you don't want to feel like you spending time alone is another thing where you have to actively be doing something. But it can be stuff that fills up your cup and brings life back into you, but also doesn't have to be difficult. Having plans is great, and I think having things to look forward to is amazing, but that plan or that date can also be with yourself, to sit with yourself and just be, and also just actually enjoy that time. I have absolutely, after especially a stressful week at work or health week, like, you know, after last night, the thing I will look forward to most is being able to sit in bed and draw, or sit in bed and watch a new episode of a series I was listening to. I think it's so important to be able to look forward to spending time in your own company, because you can't rely on other people to fill up your cup all the time. It's really important to build that in yourself and become self-sustaining, basically. And so by romanticizing and becoming acquainted with being alone, I think that is really the first step, and not seeing it as a bad thing, as a way to just like seek quiet and grounding. When you're burnt out, you actually are kind of like, what do I need right now? I have not had a minute to think and sit with my thoughts and listen to myself. And I think in the times like that, you can also get clarity of thought. You can be more creative, because you're allowing yourself to have a break from noise for a little bit, at least external noise that you can't control. It's that relief of like, gosh, I don't have to be anywhere right now. The relief of having to not keep up for a minute. The relief of not having to perform a version of yourself that looks fun when your body is actually just begging for stillness. And so I think that's what I'm learning, is that FOMO doesn't have to be FOMO. It can be a joy to actually spend time alone. And what I've also realized is, because I had so many empty friendships growing up, company doesn't mean it's good company. I'd rather actually spend time alone than time in a relationship that is toxic or that is draining, because actually you're just draining the life out of yourself, and then you have nothing left to give and you have nothing left to do to try and heal yourself. I've realized as I'm growing up that I'd honestly rather have no company at all than company that feels good and that feels fulfilling. I don't think having that more is more mentality is healthy, to be honest. And so the older I get, the more I realize that noise isn't the same as connection. And I think I've been in many ways forced to sit with myself and hear myself and know myself. And as difficult as that can be, I truly do get that. It has created this kind of peace that more never did, and that more meaning that it isn't necessarily better. I think also we have this fear that when we go out, we're under a magnifying glass. I feel like when I go out and I'm sat there without someone with me. But the truth is, no one fucking cares. No one cares that you are sat by yourself. Like, anytime I've been sat in a restaurant, seeing someone eating by themselves or working by themselves or whatever they're doing, sat on a bench by themselves, I've literally never thought anything about it, because most people aren't thinking about us. They are way too caught up in their own heads. Even if someone did notice you sitting alone, so what? Usually says nothing about you other than you're sitting alone. That's it. And you'll likely never see that stranger again. So that's what I've realized, is that if you're sat with yourself, it doesn't have to be seen as a bad thing. There are so many things that I've been wanting to do. Maybe like, oh, I've seen this exhibition I want to go to, or oh, I've seen this new food spot I want to try out. You don't need to wait for other people to start living your life and doing things for you. You don't need to wait for like, oh, I need to wait till someone is free to have company to do this thing with. Obviously, it's so nice doing things with friends, but equally, why is your company not enough to do the thing and to live your life? I've realized I spend way too much time waiting for other people to do things with me that I actually never end up doing anything because I have no one to do them with. I'll never leave the house unless I have to, even though I know that a coffee or some fresh air and a walk would do me good. I just won't go because I don't have someone to do it with me to therefore make me look like I have a friend while I'm doing these said things. And when you really think about that, it's kind of sad because there's so much life that I probably could have lived or so many experiences I could have had if I just have left the damn house by myself. And it's almost like then you don't see your own company as good enough and as a reason to give yourself a life unless you are accompanied by someone to do that, because you don't want to sit with yourself alone or spend time with yourself alone to do it. I've realized that solo dates are a form of mental self-care. They really are. I do this with everything. I'll see a restaurant I want to try, an exhibit I want to go to, and I'll wait. When is someone free? When I find someone to go with, when the week passes, months pass, and I don't do the thing. And then suddenly the thing is no longer there. Like an exhibition, oh, it's gone now because I just waited and waited for someone to say, yeah, I will come with you to do it. And so I've realized that it's so important to see them as care for yourself to do these dates that you just go and you do the thing alone, because they're proof to yourself that you don't need to postpone your life until someone else is available. So I'll be honest, I still struggle with this, especially at events, and maybe even more now. I just stand there and I feel like everyone is watching me, and I feel like it's holding a mirror up to myself and making me feel like I must be lacking something if I don't have someone stood next to me right now. But it doesn't mean anything. And so I've been asking myself, like, why have we become so uncomfortable? Being uncomfortable and being alone is being something where you're uncomfortable. And I think part of it is that we've built lives where discomfort is avoidable. You're bored, okay, you go on TikTok and you scroll. You're awkward, you put in headphones or you go on your phone like I do. You're lonely, you text someone, you FaceTime someone. And though none of that is inherently bad, it means that you never actually practice sitting in mild discomfort and sitting with yourself. And then that means then uncomfortable situations, like literally just asking for the bill, make you feel so much more uncomfortable and like these huge mountains to climb when they're really not. I recently forgot my earphones in a cab recently. I left them in another bag and I was like, shit, I'm actually going to have to sit here in silence for an hour ride and be left to my own thoughts. And that felt like a really scary feeling. And so I think it's often that sometimes being alone means that you can't feel this void and you can't feel this sound, because it means then you're not having a conversation with someone, so you don't have to just sit there and think and ponder and worry and all of this. That's it, is I think we constantly are looking for something through an outside view lens. And even when we're alone, we're imagining how we look, and we turn a normal human mundane thing like just being sat there into something where we feel we have to justify or mask it. But discomfort is also where true self-trust is built. Sitting alone in a park, walking into somewhere alone, going for a walk without needing a reason. It's practice. It's your nervous system learning you can do it. You can practice things with purpose. And I know it's a slippery slope and I know it's not one size fits all, but sometimes being left with your own thoughts feels scary. So distraction is easier and necessary at times, but it doesn't mean that it's enough. And I think it's important to say that there is a difference between choosing peace and choosing avoidance, because sometimes when we're choosing JOMO, the joy of missing out, we're really avoiding discomfort and tricking ourselves into thinking we just like being alone. We're avoiding being seen, we're avoiding awkwardness, we're avoiding the possibility of standing there with our hands by our sides, wondering what to do with ourselves. So I've been asking myself, am I staying in because I genuinely want rest, or am I staying in because I'm scared? Because those are two very different reasons and they leave you with two very different feelings after. JOMO leaves you feeling calm and peaceful. Avoidance leaves you feeling cramped and uneasy. So I think it's fair to say that for JOMO, you need a foundation of security. I remember the first few times that I put myself out there and I went on these solo dates, and it honestly felt like a humiliation ritual. I felt like I was putting myself on a stage that everyone was watching. Like I was waiting for someone to come over and literally ask me, are you okay? And if they did, I think I'd probably cry or break down, because I just was so hyper aware of every single thing I was doing with my body. Hyper aware of my hands, my face, what I was looking like, how long I was there, how I was staring at the menu. And then after 10 minutes, my nervous system chilled out and I was actually like, this is kind of nice. I'm enjoying that I can come and go as I leave. I'm not on anyone else's time, anyone else's schedule, kind of like being in a relationship versus being single. I can literally just be independent here and do this for myself and spend as long here or as short here as I want. I can order what I want. I can, do what I want. I'm on my own time. And I was kind of annoyed with myself that I'd been avoiding doing that for so long just because of this imaginary audience and this internal fear of doing something that no one else actually cares about you doing. How I've had to try and romanticize being alone is sometimes remembering, like, one of the best parts of being alone is that autonomy, is that you can come and go as you please. I think it's also that idea of being seen alone kicks in your fight or flight mode. Then you can start that gently. It doesn't have to be like, go and sit on a bench with no phone or no book or anything and just literally sit there and stare at the sky. Like, you don't have to do that. You can have these little anchors. If the fear is setting you back from being able to do these things, you can journal, you can knit, you can read, you can listen to music, you can bring a notebook. You don't have to just sit in a restaurant or sit on a bench and not have anything to do with your hands. Though there's no shame in that, I think it's completely fair that you need a bridge when it comes to easing into spending time with your own company and seeing it as a thing to enjoy rather than fear. So I've comprised a little list of solo date ideas. These are just some things that I've brainstormed for us to do if you need some ideas of ways that you can spend your time that feel restorative and not scary. Scrapbook, even if it's messy, that's the point. Declutter your space, reorganize a drawer. Go to a record shop and browse properly. Go to a bookshop or a library and let yourself wander. Sit on a bench and draw anything badly. Who cares? Try a new cafe or restaurant and make it a tiny ritual. Go on a colour walk. Pick one colour and photograph only things that are blue or red. Like, photograph that one thing. This is also a fun thing to do with a friend when you do have that time with someone. Watch a new film and review it on Letterboxd like you're a critic. Write poetry and read it. There's no pressure to be good, just write it. I have a habit of writing poetry when I'm in my feels, and then I may read it after and be like, God, Nikki, you're so dramatic. Like, you think you're a poet right now, but if that's what you needed in the moment, do it. Explore new things. Do a crossword or a puzzle. Bake something, even if it's just a simple banana bread, just do it. Keep a music journal. Listen to an album back to front and write what it made you think or feel and rate it. Go down a history rabbit hole for an hour and let curiosity lead you, and you can create a little fact file and some notes. And research something. Paint with watercolours purely for the fun of it. Purpose props in public can make things feel less scary. And that's the thing, is you don't have to just be sat there. A book, a notebook, headphones, something to hold. It's not about needing to justify your existence. It's just about soothing your nervous system while you practice discomfort. And if you want something really grounding to do while you're sat with yourself, how about writing a letter to your past self or your future self, or even exploring a relationship you lost, not to send, just to process and make peace with it? Because I think we often don't let ourselves sit in something enough to actually think about them fully and make peace with them. So the point is, alone time doesn't have to be empty time. It can be full time because it is yours. So I think we romanticize big milestones and relationships, but we rarely romanticize the in-betweens and the solo train ride and the quiet Sunday, the wandering afternoon with no plans. But those are the moments where you actually meet yourself and learn yourself. And when you stop treating those moments like placeholders until your real life starts, or you have something to do someone with, everything shifts, and then waiting becomes living. You didn't do nothing just because you were sat by yourself today. You spent it with you, and that is everything. Then spending time alone becomes trusting yourself and being intuitive. You learn to listen to yourself, what you actually like, what you actually want, what your instincts are actually telling you. And that self-trust can become confidence, and also, for me, reassurance. My little thought of the week this week is, if any of this resonates, do one small thing alone this week on purpose from my list that I've just talked about. Take my list as so many examples and reasons to get out there and do something, or to sit at home and draw. You don't need to get out there in public to show that you're spending time alone to justify it. And instead of worrying about how it looks from the outside, ask yourself how it feels from the inside. I really wanted to explore this because I completely understand that spending time with people and in real life is more important than ever. But because of that, I feel like we have become so uncomfortable by sitting with ourselves and seeing it as worthy time spent and time well spent. And it's that thing of, you can enjoy missing out on things and justify them. You just need to choose in the way you spend that time with yourself to be actually restorative. If being alone feels peaceful to you already and you've made all of these steps already, then I'm so glad for you. But if you feel like being alone feels heavy, like a sore spot, like something you're trying to outgrow, I also get it. And it isn't about forcing yourself to love solitude overnight or love your own company or love yourself. It's about not postponing your life anymore till someone tells you to press play. So thank you so much for listening to this episode. I love you guys, and it's really just about letting you know that your company counts and it matters, and sitting with ourselves can be the hardest task of all. I think some beautiful things can happen when you actually give yourself time with yourself. So that is kind of all I wanted to say about that. It's something that I feel like I'm really having to learn at the moment, that actually spending time alone does not have to be something that's out of your control. If anything, you can make it time that is in your control. As always, I love you guys. Thank you for sitting with me for this one. I hope it made enough sense with me not mentally being fully there today. But yeah, I really appreciate you for sitting with me for this one. And as always, remember to be kind to yourself and live a little. Bye.